with Crestwood. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar. I just want to go through a few housekeeping items before we begin. First of all, I am recording today's session, so tomorrow, usually about 24 hours, you'll get an email with a link that you can view the recording. That way, if there's something you want to revisit, something you missed, or share the recording with someone else, you're welcome to. During today's webinar, if you do have some questions, we'll leave some time at the end for a Q&A session, but I ask that you type your questions into that questions area in your GoToWebinar tool pane. That way we'll have a list of questions we can go through at the end. And if for some reason we don't know the answer to your question or there's a little bit more to it, I will have your name and email and we can follow up with you after the webinar. The third thing to note is when the webinar is over and you leave the GoToWebinar screen, there'll be a quick survey questions, about 8 of them that pop up on your screen. If you could answer those, I would greatly appreciate it. It always helps us just to get a little bit of feedback on our webinar. On that note, today's webinar is going over some of the things that we take a look at with year-end with Dynamics SL. And I'm happy to say that we have Cammie with us. I work with Cammie at Crestwood. She's one of our senior consultants. And ITs are saying that she's been working with SL forever, but she told me it's been at least 12 years. So on that note, I'm going to turn everything over to Cammie. And thanks for joining us today, Cammie. I really appreciate you taking the time out to do this.
No problem. Hi, everyone. It's good to have you aboard for our session today. So as you can see, I am actually in SL 2015 CU1. That is, of course, the latest version of SL as of today. So the first thing I want to do for those users who have been on SL for a while and may be shocked to find this out, but as of 12/15/2016, there are no end-of-year updates being provided by Microsoft. Now, why do you ask? Well, for all intents and purposes, there have been no changes to the existing SL reports, to the forms, to the media, magnetic media change file. Nothing changed. 1099 forms didn't have to change, so we don't have that specific process that we have gone through in years past. Now, for the people that are doing payroll, I just want to mention that that's different than tax updates. So if you happen to be on payroll and you're using SL to process, typically the tax updates come out at the end of the year or even the first of the next year. So sometimes they're late December, early January. Some of the ways you can go about finding that information, for those who are on 2011 and future or 2015, there's something in SL called Roll Center, and I don't know if you've ever used it or even thought about using it, but if you have, what it does, it has a little tickler here. Here's Customer Source. Customer Source is where you'll find all this valuable information of any time that there's updates that you need to be aware of. You do have to have credentials to log into Customer Source. That can be provided by your administrator, your SL administrator, and or your partner can help you if you don't know who in your organization has access to Customer Source. But if you do, and you want to go out to Customer Source, you will notice that it has what's new. So it does have a message here about what's new in 2006 year end. Mine's a little different than yours because I have Partner Source, not Customer Source. But it just tells you that there are no updates this year. It would show you tax updates if that was applicable. Also, so that's just a good place to go. You can go out on the web using your web browser also, but just something to think about. So we're going to go ahead and start on payroll, and we're going to talk about what would have happened if there were year-end updates. Just as I said earlier, you would go out to Microsoft either on Customer Source or Partner Source. You would click on the Microsoft Dynamics SL as the product and download the version that applies to your software. Now, the way that you can tell which version of software you're on is to come over here to Help. So up on your toolbar, you'll see a little, and it'll say About Microsoft Dynamics SL. So this helps you understand which version you're on so that you know that you're going to download the correct version of tax updates and the year-end updates. Year-end updates typically include any current year reports, any year-end resolutions, any changes to the media file, and any 1099 changes. Note that the year-end updates, when they do come out, are only for 2011 Feature Pack 1 and above. So if you are on an older version like SL70, you will not get the updates at all ever again. So you need to be mindful of that. Tax tables will not be updated for those versions. They typically suggest that you apply the year-end updates after you have closed payroll for the year. Another thing about Customer Source is you'll find hot fixes that may come out for your. It's always a good tool for you to go out to and actually find the latest and greatest hot fixes if there is something that's going on with your specific version of SL. In the payroll module itself, the year-end considerations to be made is that tax reporting is done on a calendar year basis. So even if you are on a fiscal year calendar, when you are actually closing payroll, and in payroll is closed in the general ledger module. Whatever your fiscal year is, if the 12th month of the fiscal year happens to be in this data system, would be period 1, you would want to close the year. And this has to be done in order for you to process payroll correctly going forward. Assuming that your setup is correct, once you've closed payroll and you allow this, and this is defined by your setup screens, you can still post to prior periods as long as your setup screens have allowed you to do that. The W-2 and 1099 amounts are updated based on check date, so that's important also. We're going to start now with just the payroll year-end processes. You want to reconcile your 941 and your unemployment reports prior to closing the module. You want to print your W-2s. Within SL, SL offers a couple of formats for your W-2s. One form ride or 4 up. SL doesn't offer copy but you can use the plain paper copy D to do those copies if you want to. One thing to keep in mind when you're calculating payroll for the W-2s or doing your W-2 calculations, when we go into this screen, you have to choose your employee or your payroll ID. So in this case, it's going to be semi-monthly. You want to make sure you're choosing the calendar year that you are putting the information in, and then you just grab the people that you're wanting in that group to process the W-2s. Now, the good thing is you can process W-2s as many times as possible. So if you do it the first time and you find out that the information is wrong, there's some typical reasons why that might have happened. One of the common reasons why your W-2s may be wrong is the federal wages are incorrect. And why might that be? To identify the earnings types that are set up incorrectly. So if you find you have a problem, it's typically that one of your earnings types is not set up correctly. So you need to make sure, for example, if this needed to be a box number on your W-2, you need to make sure that that information is in here correctly. You make sure that these are the deductions that apply to this earning type. The same thing is applicable to deduction IDs. If we have California tax in this example, and let's just say the amounts are not correct, we need to go ahead and make sure for the next year that the amounts have been corrected. So we need to make sure that the box number is correct, make sure that this deduction type says state. In this case, this is a state deduction type. Once that happens, you'll want to come down here to where you go into well, let's do this. You actually need to go into initialize mode. Now, for those people who have never used initialize mode, you have to have rights to be able to do this. So not everybody in your organization will be able to do this. Also, initialize mode can be very challenging in the sense that you do really need to have a lot of knowledge in order to make these changes. So not everybody should be in here doing this. So we're going to go into the W-2 calculation. I meant W-2 employee history. I'm going to pull up my employee. And a year. And let's just say the federal income tax was wrong. So now that I'm on initialize mode, I can change that information. If I do that, then that would make the information on my W-2 correct for this period. Now, keep in mind, and this is very important, I only want to use the history if I'm editing a prior year's data. If I need to change this employee's information currently because something's wrong, I need to go into employee maintenance and change it there instead of using employee W-2 history. Some of the other reasons why the state wages are incorrect is earning types that are set up incorrectly. Missing exemptions, so if they weren't set up correctly, if a tax amount is incorrect, is it because the federal, state, or local tax exempts are not set up right with the correct amount. Key issue is to correct the setup issues to avoid problems in the following year. Please use caution when using initialize mode. I can't stress that enough. If you're not comfortable with making changes to your employee's W-2 history, please contact your partner. They'll be happy to assist you. W-2 calculations can be ran at any time and run multiple times. Inactive employees will be included, so if they did have data during this year, they will show up. Specific box numbers and W-2 control tabs and earnings and maintenance or deduction maintenance. One thing that we can do is when we calculate, you'll notice that if I have done this one time, if I already went through and got my, it'll tell me that I've got edited W-2 info. So then I have a choice if I want to protect that information, if I want to make sure that nothing happens to that information because I've already gone through the steps to correct. I want to make sure that checkbox is checked. Then I'm going to hit begin processing, and it's going to calculate it and protect the info for the W-2s. If I don't care, or if I don't want to protect the information, or if I'm going to start over, I want to make sure I uncheck that box and hit begin processing. Then it won't, anything that you've done in W-2 history, it won't show up on the W-2 form that you're about to print. There's a company called Deluxe that has done Microsoft SL forms for years. They can help you with pre-printed forms if you want to order them. You can also just use the forms that come with out-of-the-box SL. If you printed your forms last year, you're not going to notice any difference this year. So the alignment and everything should be okay. You should be able to print them just as you always did. The magnetic media file is a way for larger employers to send their file if it's a requirement. If it is a requirement, you just populate the required fields, and we're going to go down to the magnetic media. Okay, so what we would do is we would make sure we're in the right calendar year. The address for the annual filing instructions in this case is the employer. On the employer tab, this information defaults from your default company information. So having said that, if this is different than your company setup, you can actually alter it on the screen before you process the file for transmitting. You would need to make sure that you have you're authorized to transmit the file and that you have the PIN number that's provided by the SSA so that if there is a problem with the file, they know how to contact you. Once you're ready to do the electronic file, you would just say begin processing. This is the path to the file. You can change that as needed in case you want it to be at a different location. So now we're going to go down into Project Controller. Project Controller is the only module within SL that actually closes in its own little specialized screen. So it's actually all other modules modules close in GL. One of the things that you would want to do before you close Project Controller is you want to make sure that you've reviewed time cards. Make sure that you completed labor commitment load, GL labor posting, and pay labor interface. Now, there are several people on this call that don't have payroll, so some of these items are not applicable. And some people may not be using time cards at all. So this is strictly for people that are using those particular features within Project Controller. You want to review your expense reports. You want to make sure you've got all your batches posted. You want to make sure that you, if you've got any batches on hold, you do something about that so that you have, that you've really gone through and scrubbed. One of the final things you want to do is you want to run the FTT process. You want to make sure, and you can keep running this as many times as you need to until you get to the very, down to the wire that you're actually going to hit the button to close. You want to complete all your revenue recognition and allocation processes. So one last time, even if you have auto allocation turned on, please go in here and run it one more time just to see what happens, and if you have any batches that are stuck, any batches that you might need to deal with. If you're using flex billing, you're going to want to go into flex billing, and you're going to want to hit billings transaction load. You're going to make sure that everything that you process through allocation, whether it's a charge entry batch, whatever's going on, expense report, that has all gone up to your flexible billing screen. You want to make sure you complete invoicing. You want to do your posting. Make sure that you posted invoices. One thing that comes up occasionally that people forget about, if you don't do a lot of reversals, some people forget that they actually have to put a period to post in the reversal section in order for it to post that document. So even though your flexible billing person may think that they've done everything that they needed to do, it may not go up to GL correctly if that information is missing from this screen. Once you've done all those steps and verified the information, you would come back down and you would go into the close screen. Where it says close period. Notice in my system right now, because it thinks that I'm in period 12 of 1998, it's going to say begin year-end close. If this was not period 12, if it was another period, it would not say year-end, it would just close period. So as you do normally every month, you'll notice that it'll give you either warnings or errors. If there's errors, you have to deal with it before you close. If not, then you can move on. The warnings are just what they are in the sense that they're just telling you that they basically, you might want to go look at AP, but you don't have to. The reason we want to make sure that we've closed Project Controller is it checks all the sub-modules that posted to project. The accounting modules are closed to additional entries. All project charge batches are posted. It closes is blocked if any exceptions are identified. Time cards are reviewed and a warning message appears containing the number of unposted items if you've got a lot of batches out there that haven't been posted. The other thing about Project Controller, it is a little more forgiving than the other modules, because if for whatever reason you decide that I've closed it but I really don't need it closed right this minute, I want to go back and do some modifications, you do have the ability to do that. The reason that happens sometimes Here's an example. So let's say I have this project, and I've decided that, you know, I go and I look at my data and I've got 0 balances at the beginning of the project. And that's not what my plan had been. The reason that happened is if my projects are not set up correctly and you have this balance for it at year-end not checked, you're not going to see any beginning balances once you close the year. If that happens, you can come back in here, check the box. Please make sure everybody is out of SL. Go back and reset the period to the prior period. Run the process for closing again. Once you do that, then you will be able to get your beginning balances. As an example, in Project Net Profit, on your reports, you would be able to see them. But if that box is not checked, you would have nothing in the project to date amount. It would just be clear for the new year once we've closed project. Controller. Okay, so now we're going to move on to AP. Okay, so in accounts payable, the main problem with accounts payable is the 1099s. So we're going to just go over the first things you would typically do to process year-end. You would review the open accounts payable files. Very important, you would print the AP batch register report and review statuses. Some of you in later versions have quick queries that help you define which batches are on hold, which batches have not been processed. That is what we're talking about. You want to make sure you're looking at that information and figuring out, you know, what to do with those batches, if they really need to be posted, if they need to be deleted, whatever needs to happen. You want to make sure, if you don't have auto posting feature turned on, that you come over to the Release AP Batches screen and release every batch that's in here, if applicable. You want to make sure you've printed the vendor trial balance. And a very, very, very important, I can't stress this enough, it is very advantageous to print the period-sensitive aged AP. Even though it claims that it keeps up with the data, it's just good to have a copy once you close the period, just to make sure that you have it to review if anything happens after the fact, if people come back and post a bunch of data and change your numbers. It's important that you tie the vendor period trial balance in the AP sensitive aged AP reports to the GL trial balance. If you're not doing that on a monthly basis, it's a little arduous at the end of the year, but it's very important to make sure that your financials are sound and that everything in AP has been done correctly in GL. If you've got any recurring entries, make sure you put those in. So if you've got recurring entries that you're going to be doing for the next year and you need to release them for this year, please make sure they're in the system. The last things you would want to do is you want to print the check register and the aged AP reports. Then you can close the year in AP. So once again, when you close the AP module, you're doing it up in GL. There's not a special section down here. This is the most important thing I could probably say today, because this is the thing that we get the most calls on. Okay. If you are one of those organizations that happen to take a while to close, especially at the end of the year, but you've got obligations. You want to write a check in the next year. You're not going to be able to do that until you run this process. So you can only have in Dynamics SL 2 calendar years that are open. So for example, in this, let's say I'm in 2001. I would purge the oldest year. This would become my current year of 2000. This would be my next year of 2001. That would allow me to write checks in January of 2001. Otherwise, I'm going to get an error message, and you're going to call your reseller or you're going to call your partner and say, I can't write checks. Now, the one thing about this screen that I need to tell you about is please be careful. If you hit begin processing more than one time, if you go too far out, if you skip ahead and you end up being in 2001 and you really still need 1999, it can be fixed, but it can't be fixed on the front end. So I just ask that if you hit begin processing, just let it be, let it finish its, what it's going to go through, and stop. But if you do happen to accidentally purge it too many times, your reseller can help you handle that situation. There's some SQL things that have to be done on the back end, but we can get it reset for you. Now, if we're going to actually print our, and preview our 1099s, we would come down here to our 1099 preview. When you print this report, the thing to keep in mind is it's actually going to show you anybody that's set up as a 1099 vendor, whether they have an amount or not. This is what you're going to use to actually edit and make sure that your 1099s have been set up correctly throughout the year. Now, here's a good news, bad news point. The bad news is if you realize that America needed to be a 1099 and you haven't set them up, we can make it right in the system for them to get a 1099, but it's not going to be automatic. It's going to be a manual task, and there's nothing I can do about after the fact with the documents that have already been released. What I mean by that is, so I'm already in initialize mode. So the fact that I'm in initialize mode, these squares are open to me to edit, okay? If I found out that, I really needed this guy to have $1,500 in other income for the year, the person who has rights to be in initialize mode can come in here and edit that. That will change the information on their form, and you would be able to print and print preview and find that information is correct now. And then once you're ready and you've decided that you've gone through that, and checked all your forms, when you go to print 1099 forms, it's only going to be the ones that meet the criteria for the 1099 limit. So once you get to you're not going to see everybody, you're just going to see the ones that are legally supposed to get 1099s this year. You can print these as many times as you have forms. Yet again, you can go and use Deluxe to get your forms, or you can use the forms that are in the system. If you have done this in prior years, you don't have to worry about it. The forms should, print just fine, and you shouldn't have any issues. If you've gone through an upgrade, you may want to test that out just to see if the form needs to be tweaked a little. Sometimes it gets misaligned, and there may be some small amount of changes that just have to be done on the crystal report. Um, if for some reason you are, let's just use 2017 as an example, if you really for some reason haven't reset your 1099 year and you want to print the next year, you have to check this box. So if you're behind and you haven't advanced your 1099 year and you want what that screen thinks is the next year, then you have to check this box in order for your forms to print. So that's found on your Options tab. So if you need to generate a 1099 electronic file, you can generate that file on either of the 2 years that are open in your 1099 details. Common AP 1099 processing issues, that system message 532 where it says close 1099 year, that's what I was alluding to earlier. Have to make sure that this is in the right years. 1099 balances are incorrect for a vendor, so you just have to manually correct them by being in initialize mode. And then one of the other problems, and the biggest problem, is if the current 1090 year was purged by mistake. That has to be updated in SQL, and we can assist you with that information. Now I'm going to kind of jump on a slightly different subject, not to confuse anybody, but just to bring something to your attention. We are really, really excited and expecting that CU2 will be released here shortly, and I do mean before December is over. With CU2, you don't have to uninstall anything. It's just a cumulative update of hotfixes. But some of those hotfixes for the payroll folks who've had issues with Fed 9 are included in that. So it is something that I would recommend you thinking about. You know, having that when it is out installed, so that you don't have to individually go out to customer source and get those hot fixes. There also the people who are on 7.0, I am sorry to say that your date is coming up pretty fast where they are no longer going to support extended support. So what that means to you is as of 10/10/2017, if you're on 7.0, you're no longer going to have general support. So if you needed to call Microsoft because your batch was not working and they're not going to be able to assist you. Just something to keep in mind as you're planning the coming years. Within the CU2, there are some, additional features too that we're going to have additional webinars to go over. But I just wanted you to kind of be aware, and you can always look at our website too for the latest updates. When we find out the information, we sometimes, I know marketing does global emails to help everybody understand, what's coming out, what's next, and it just may be an option for you if you want to go that route. So I guess that's about ending. It's a little light on what's, this year just because we don't actually have year-end updates. One thing I do want to say, and I can't reiterate this enough, if you are doing payroll, and if you actually do have local or state taxes, last year was unique too, in the sense that we only had one update for last year, and that was January of 2016. Prior to last year, we've had updates quarterly. So, something to put on your calendar, just, to either ask or think about. If you get a bulletin from the IRS, they very may well be updates to the state taxes throughout the year. And like I said before, I do believe that the tax updates will be out late December or early January, and we can certainly help you get those loaded in your system if you have any troubles. Having said that, I guess that about wraps it up. Jen, I think if we have any questions, we can go over those right now. Hello?
Oh, sorry, Cammie. I forgot I had 2 mute buttons on there. Can you hear me okay?
I can. So,
okay.
Do you have any questions?
I don't see any coming in at the moment. Why don't we give people a minute? Sometimes it takes a little bit to type those in. So to roll the next 1099 year, will that be current year 2017 and then next year 2018?
So you want right now, assuming that you want to be 2016 to 2017. If you're finished with your processing for your 2016 1099s, then you can roll it to 2017 as the current year 2017 is. But you keep in mind, and this is important, if you're not completely sure those 1099s are right, I would leave it on current year 2016, next year 2017, until you're finished your 1099 processing.
Okay. Can you quickly just repeat like the different areas that we want to make sure we look at? Or like I know like you in the webinar you started with the payroll and W-2s. Do you just have like a quick list of those certain areas that we just want to make sure we take an extra look at?
Okay, so in payroll, we want to make sure that we've confirmed all data for 2006 has been entered. We've reviewed our payroll batch register to make sure all batches have been released and posted. We've reconciled our payroll accounts in payroll with GL. We can use the account distribution and the GL trial balance. We've printed our period end reports, the 941 quarterly tax worksheet, the unemployment tax worksheet, and the earnings and deductions report. And then we should be able, once we've done those audits, to close payroll for the year. Okay? If we're in AP, we want to make sure that we've printed our period-sensitive aged AP reports, our check register, our AP, you can do the regular AP batch. You want to make sure that you've released all your batches. Review open accounts payable files. So if you want to be very proactive, you can always close down your vendors. You want to review and print your AP batch register report and review statuses. That's what's going to tell you whether or not you're on hold whether you've got suspended batches, whether you've got balance batches that you haven't processed yet. You'll want to post transactions to the GL. So if you're on auto posting, it's going to go all the way up. If not, make sure you go into the release AP batch screen and just make sure there's nothing in there. You want to tie both the vendor period trial balance and the AP period sensitive aged AP reports to the GL trial balance report. You want to confirm that you've got any recurring entries have been generated and released. Finally, you want to print the check register once you've processed all your checks, and you can print your AP reports. Then you're ready to close AP. For Project Controller, we want to make sure all data has been entered for the current period. We want to make sure all other modules have been closed. Typically, we want to make sure we've closed everything else before we close Project Controller, so that once we're done with Project Controller, especially allocations are done, and we want to review time cards. We want to make sure we've completed the processes for labor commitment load, GL labor posting, pay labor interface. We want to make sure we've reviewed expense reports. And then most importantly, and you can run this as many times as possible, we want you to make sure that you've done the financial transaction transfer process. Complete any revenue recognition and allocation processes that you normally go through. Execute the billing transaction load, but that's only for those people that are in that have flexible billing or using complete your invoice if you're using flexible billing, and then close the period. Is there anything else, Jen?
No, I don't see any other questions coming in. Thanks for the quick little recap summary of all those things that we want to make sure we touch on. Tell you what, if there are other questions people have, you feel free to email them directly to me at Crestwood. You can just reply to the registration email for the webinar and I can get that. Or you can also email our support team, which is support@crestwood.com, and they can help you out with some of those year-end questions if you have them also. So thank you everybody for coming, and Cammie, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to do this webinar for us. I know I learned a few things today, so thank you.
Thank you.
And on your way out of the webinar, if you can make sure to answer those 8 survey questions, I would greatly appreciate it. All right, thanks everybody, and have a great holiday.
Thank you.